Okay. Bienvenue and welcome to participants from across the Americas on Zoom and guests on Facebook Live to this important event hosted by Nature Canada today. My name is Ted Chesky. I am the Naturalist Director with Nature Canada. Myself and my colleague and co-host, Gauri Srinivas, are speaking to you from Gatineau, Quebec, and Ottawa, Ontario, which are within the unceded, unsurrendered territories of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. So people can listen in their own language. We have some live interpretation options available in Cree, French, and Spanish. Only if you are participating through Zoom. And unfortunately, the option in Portuguese is not available today. On the lower right side of your Zoom screen, there's a small round interpretation button. Click on that and it will open a small window with the three options for languages other than English, again, only in Zoom. Click on the button that corresponds to the language in which you want to listen. I will now explain in the other two languages, then Cree. Si vous voulez écouter en français, sur le côté inférieur droit de votre écran de Zoom, il y a un petit bouton d'interprétation ronde. Cliquez dessus pour voir les quatre options de langue, ou les trois options de langue, autres que l'anglais. Cliquez sur français. Si quieres escuchar en español, en el lado inferior derecho de la pantalla de Zoom hay un pequeño botón redondo de interpretación. Haga clic en eso y se abrirá una pequeña ventana con las tres opciones para idiomas distintos del inglés. Haga clic en el botón que dice español. And just a reminder to panelists, including myself, to mute when not speaking. We want to acknowledge with our gratitude the Cree Nation government, the Cree Trappers Association, and the Eeyou Marine Region Wildlife Board, who are our partners for this event. We are especially grateful to be able to support the efforts of the Crees to protect biodiversity within their homelands. We're also grateful to our partners in the BirdLife Americas family who have joined this event from across the Americas to hear about this significant work. I've been the lucky one with Nature Canada to travel on many occasions to Waskaganish, Wamingee, and Shisasabe communities, Cree communities along the coast of James Bay, to work side by side with the Cree and non-Cree team members to observe and document birds that use the coastal habitats for breeding or as refueling and rest sites during the migrations. We have the map just to show you where we're talking about. So this area is called Istchee, and it's a very, very large area. And it includes, as well as the area that's darkened there, an offshore zone that includes what's called the marine area that are used by the Crees and by the Inuit. And I'd like to follow this up with an image that the Deputy Grand Chief and I want to share with you that shows the relationship of the people to the land. The photo is from inside a teepee and shows the preparation of a Canada goose in the traditional way of the Crees in this area. It's called sigabon, and it's amazing. Geese are a staple in the diet of the Cree. As I mentioned, our work on birds helps inform the Cree Nation's efforts to determine new areas to protect from industrial threats, where wildlife and their traditional cultural practices can thrive. Some of this wildlife includes a group of species of birds called shorebirds that depend on healthy stopover sites for their survival, Many species migrate nonstop from James Bay to South America, where they spend their non-breeding season. It's pretty obvious that we need protection of these stopover habitats across the hemisphere. What do you think, Gauri?
Yes, absolutely. There's no question about that. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I'm delighted to see some of our participants already are putting in the chat which territory they're connecting in from today. We'd love to see that. So please send your greetings and your identified territory and share it with all, and then we can see the breadth of participants who are here today. My name is Gauri Srinivas, and I'm the Policy and Campaigns Director at Nature Canada. Maybe just a word about us. Since 1939, Nature Canada has been a voice for nature. We connect the dots between local action and systemic change to solve the biodiversity crisis. But we do not and can't not do that on our own. We do it working with partners. And together with them, our advocacy has helped protect species, land, and waters across Canada. In addition to First Nation and Métis partners from different parts of the country, we work with more than 900 organizations in a nature network and more than 250,000 nature lovers across the country who share our goals, and we work to generate the political will that's needed for transformation. And transformation at this time is sorely needed. We are facing an interlinked climate and biodiversity crisis, and we know that we are losing nature faster than we can recover it, from wetlands to forests and grasslands to our precious wildlife. But Canada, along with many other nations, has recently committed to a major new global goal to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030 and ensure nature's full recovery by 2050. Wow, it's an incredible goal, and it's a game-changing new commitment. It centers the need for urgent action to stop the destruction of nature and to ensure a future for all life on the planet. The question is, what actions are really needed to make that goal a reality? We know that negotiations are now underway through the UN Convention on Biological Diversity to set out a 10-year new legally binding global biodiversity framework, one that we hope will guide all nations to stabilize species loss by 2030 and allow for the full recovery of natural ecosystems by 2050. And while governments and many communities are struggling against diverging interests to make that a reality, today we want to share with you a story of hope, a story of a government with a clear vision to achieve this future. It is a vision of Indigenous-led conservation that offers us all a path towards reconciliation with each other and with the land. Today's event shines a spotlight on the Cree Nation and their territory that spans about 450,000 square kilometers in northern Quebec, as Ted showed a little bit earlier on the map. We have the privilege of hearing about this work today from recently elected Deputy Grand Chief of the Cree Nation, Norman Wapatche. Deputy Grand Chief, it is with deepest gratitude that I pass the microphone over to you now to introduce your work to protect this territory. A reminder to our listeners, you can click on the small round interpretation button on the bottom right to hear the Deputy Grand Chief's words in Cree and French and Spanish. Norman, over to you. Just need you to unmute, and Ted, you'll need to mute.
Good evening, Mitch. Thank you very much for having me, Ted and Gauri. Norman Eeyou Patchin Sinkasa Inuni Inusitnuchi. Greetings to all participants from all walks of life. I will be speaking to you from my homeland, Istchee, where I was born, raised, and nurtured. My father is a full-time hunter and trapper. My mother is an artisan. We live permanently out on the land. Today I'll speak to you about Eeyou, our homeland, and our efforts to protect and preserve our lands and our traditional way of life. About Eeyou of Istchee. Istchee is the traditional territory and homeland of the Cree of northern Quebec. The term Istchee means the land of the people, the Innu. Literally, Innu means a living being. Istchee means a living land. We, the Innu, have a special relationship with the land. It is like a mother-child relationship. We are inseparable, we are interconnected, and interdependent with all forms of life within the Istchee. We believe that the land has life, it has breath, but it has no voice to defend itself from overexploitation. We as Innu, who have lived and occupied the Istchee from time immemorial, have a sacred obligation to protect and preserve the land and our way of life for our future generations. The Istchee covers some 400,000 kilometers, and we have over 300 family trap lines out in the territory. The Istchee includes lakes, rivers, and drain into the James Bay and Hudson Bay Basin. These are major rivers. And in the northern part of our territory, we have the tundra, marsh, estuaries, islands, lakes, and major rivers. In the southern part, we have the boreal forest, thick black spruce, many lakes, rivers, wildlife habitats. We use these areas for our well-being. Up in the north, we border with the Inuit. Northeast, we border with the Naskapi, the Innu, and the Etskamekw and Algonquins in the southern part of our territory. For us, the Innu, all of the Istchee and life within it is sacred. There are more than 18,000 Cree. Back in 1975, there were roughly 6,000. Our population has grown significantly over the years. There's 16,000 that live in the 10 communities. We have 5 coastal communities along the James Bay and Hudson Bay, 5 inland communities in the inland. And we also have three non-Cree settlements that are situated in the southern part of our ancestral lands, which are Chibougamau, Chappé, and Matagami. These non-settlements depend mainly on mining and forestry. Back in the 1980s, early prospectors came into our traditional territory in search for gold, copper, zinc. Our areas has high mineral potential. Throughout the 30s and 40s, there was an influx of prospectors that entered the Istchee. Throughout the years, mining activities intensified and took precedence over our Cree traditional way of life. For the Ojibwe Cree, where I am from, our people had to relocate our settlement 7 times within a 50-year period to make room for development. It was all done in the name of progress, where we were known as the squatters on Crown lands. JBNQA, the James Bay Nordic Quebec Agreement, is the first modern treaty in Canada. I'm not going to go through the court cases and things like that, but one thing I would want to mention would be the Cree negotiators back then. Their spirit and intent during the negotiations was to ultimately protect the environment and the Cree way of life. The land was the number one thing that they wanted to protect. The JBNQA solidified the rights of the Cree and set up 2 regimes for protection of these rights, such as the environmental social regime under Section 22 and the hunting, fishing, trapping regime under Section 24. The James Bay, the JBNQA describes the principle of conservation as the pursuit of optimum natural productivity of all living resources and the protection of the ecological system of the territory so as to protect endangered species and to ensure primarily the continuance of the traditional way of life. In the agreement, we have our land regime has three category 1 lands, which is exclusive use of the decree, and category 2 lands, exclusive right to hunt, fish, and trap, as well as category 3 lands that we can use for traditional activities. This is where most of our family trap lines are. Back in the 80s, we had 80s and 90s, we encountered problems with the forest industry. At the time, the forest industry was not compatible with the Cree way of life. You had large areas that were clear cut, and it had detrimental impact on the environment, wildlife habitats, as well as on the Cree way of life. In 2002, Pays de Brave was negotiated. We had to address these issues. So when the Pays de Brave was signed in 2002, that's when the adapted forestry regime was more compatible with the Cree way of life. All of a sudden, the trappers were able to play a role in the management of the territory. They were able to identify the sacred sites of special interests, wildlife, and integrate these sites into the planning process. MFFB and the forestry companies were required to carry out meaningful consultations with the Cree. So it allowed the Cree to play a greater role in the development and management of lands and natural resources within the UC. And it became more compatible with the Cree way of life. There are still issues out there that the Cree and both parties, both signatories of the agreement are working towards to address to increase the level of protection within the area. Also in 2012, we signed the Eeyou Marine Regional Land Claims Agreement. At the time when none of it was created, the offshore islands and the Cree that the offshore islands the Cree used and occupied in the James Bay and Hudson Bay area were included in them. The Cree got together and met with the government of Canada to be able to include those as part of to recognize the rights of the Cree in those islands. So the agreement itself, the 2000 agreement itself, recognized the rights of the Cree in the offshore region. Under federal jurisdiction, the agreement provides for a creation of marine protected areas in the offshore agreement. We did a lot of work in the pre-regional conservation strategy as well, and with the EMR, we're able to develop plans on how we could protect certain areas that are of interest with the Cree. We usually work a lot with the communities in the identification of these sites and carry out studies to be able to protect these areas. A lot of the work has been done, and it still needs to be a lot of it needs to be worked on still. The other thing was the governance agreement in 2013. We had an issue with the MBJ at the time, whereby MBJ had powers over Category 3 lands. All of a sudden, the Cree found themselves being pushed back into Category 1 lands, and also had to follow MBJ's regulations. It allowed them, and then that's when the negotiations started. The governance negotiations started that led to the governance agreement. The governance agreement allowed the Cree to play a greater role in the governance of ESG. And it's where the EU Planning Commission was created, and the EPC is the unit that works with a land use plans for Category 2 lands. We work extensively with the communities and identifying the values, principles on how we could up in the Cree communities and apply these in Category 1 lands as well as in Category 3 lands. And so basically what that happened with the governance agreement was also it allowed the Cree to come out of Category 1 lands to play a greater role in Category 2 lands and 3 lands. So it's we're able to work with provincial, national, and international instruments to be able to assert our rights to be able to protect lands, areas that are very important to the Cree to ensure that our way of life continues for the next generation. Our team that works with the environment. They're the ones that are really involved in working with the communities in the identification of protected areas. We were able to manage to protect 20%. There's still work that needs to be done in those areas. And our vision is to maintain strong ties to the Cree cultural heritage and the way of life and sustain biodiversity by creating a large interconnected network of conservation areas in the UC. So we're able to work together with the communities and be able to. There was a lot of work put into this, and then we have the landlord whereby we have the 20%, a little over 20% that we were able to secure for protection in EUC. We still have the 30% to come up. Our goal was to protect the 50% of EUC. And we work with a lot with the communities, Cree Trappers Association, the Cree Nation Youth Council, and the Environment and Remedial Works Department, Culture and Language Departments. We have extensive work. One of the things that I was very proud of working with is the Cree Place Names Project. I recall one time we did the project and I had a map in my office. My father steps into my office and looks at the map and reads out. And it was to restore all the Cree place names that were removed, I guess. And as my father was reading these out, the land became alive. It had a story to tell, events that happened and what took place in different areas. Now, all that was captured in there. EUC for me had a very powerful voice. Those were voices from our ancestors. And it meant a lot to me. There's going to be more work done on that. Yeah, we worked a lot with the communities and different Cree entities, bodies to ensure that we were adequately addressing the our areas that are significantly important to the Cree to ensure that our way of life continues and it's not being pushed aside again to make room for development. But we are here for today's generation and the next generation in the protection of these areas.
Thank you so much, Deputy Grand Chief, for that informative and an inspirational overview. I want to encourage participants. I know you've been using the chat to identify where you are from. I want to encourage you to use the Q&A function on the Zoom screen if you have questions or comments that you would like to pose to Deputy Grand Chief, and we will make time to get to some of those in a little bit. I'm going to ask you a little bit to expand a little bit more on the story you've told, Deputy Grand Chief. Your government really has such a clear vision for protection of your homelands and guided, as you've noted so well, by extensive consultation internally with communities, both inland and on the coast. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about your vision for moving forward, for extending protection. And in terms of the actors that you were trying to engage external to Cree communities, what support are you finding from other levels of government? And a second part to that question would be if you could share what are the obstacles with these or other external actors that are also there that you are facing as you try and seek further restoration and protection of your homeland. But tell us a little bit about the support you're looking for from other levels of government and what obstacles remain.
Thank you very much for the question. One of the for us, these areas that are significantly important for the Cree are is something that we always pursue to find protection for. And we work a lot with the Cree communities, especially our elders, because they have all that traditional knowledge, and we work with a lot of scientific knowledge. We try to use these to be able to develop some guidelines on how we could protect these areas, and in the identification of values, principles, and so forth in these areas. And these are, and a lot of the times that we work with the elders have a clear vision of how they want to leave the land for their future generations, and they have a lot of them are wish to love sharing that knowledge with us and documenting all the things that they wanted to share. Some of the obstacles, the challenges that we have these days are like I said, like we have municipalities, non-Cree municipalities that that occupy the southern part of the Cree territory, and their economic base is forestry and mining, and we got to find ways on how we could coexist, I guess, in a way where we could meet halfway. And forestry has had a big impact on our way of life, and it still is. It still has a big impact. So we're trying to find ways on how we could improve our relationships, and we have because these settlements were built when mining entered into the area, and it had at the time the Mining Act was there, and back then mining, when a company found gold or copper or zinc, they build a town, and then after they leave the area, and then it's usually the provincial government that runs takes over the municipalities. So they're here, we know, and but we're working with them. That's why we signed a governance agreement.
Thank you, and thank you for also highlighting how I was asking you about other external actors, but I appreciated that you started back with the important role the elders and those tables and the knowledge centers are still playing in guiding that forward vision. And you're describing the engagement that's required with mining companies and other communities. Has there the governance agreements that you've experienced then, though are there supportive things that the federal and provincial governments could also be roles that they could be playing as we move forward?
Yeah, with the governance agreement, you have the province in there, and we have a set up some Tigger tables, we call them. Let's say it's tables that are occupied by the Jamaicians, we call them, the non-Cree and the Cree, and working together in forest planning, and also with the other tables are there connected, and we seem to work towards a common goal. We have common issues, and of course we have a common interest as well. And some issues we put them aside, the ones that are hard to tackle, and we try to tackle the ones that we could that could bring us closer together. And also, we have the under Canada, we have the governance. We have other agreements with them that deal with the lands, even with the offshore agreement, where we could work with them in the identification of some sites that are important to the Cree. And we carry out a lot of studies on the impacts of wildlife or other like even for the marine life. We work together on these things, and the thing that we want to do is to create a national marine park up on the offshore areas.
Yes, you mentioned the wildlife. There are so many species of wildlife that rely on your territory, and that I know the Cree people have such a deep relationship with. You were speaking both about the shores and the waters. We wanted to ask a little bit about migratory birds. We know for migratory birds, your territory is sort of just one part of their broader global habitat, and we have species like the endangered Rufa redknot that gather along the coast of James Bay each year in places like Botswana Bay. They fatten up in order to power their nonstop migration from James Bay to South America. And all along their migration route, their stopover habitats are threatened, as you say, so much you're experiencing in your territory, by different kinds of development, by pollution, by disturbance from industrial development and other kinds of human activity. What would you say today to people elsewhere in the Americas who share some of the same species of birds like the red knot, but who are also relying on the habitat used by these birds and also trying to make their communities work in traditional economies? What advice do you have about and what would you like to say to them in terms of your shared interest in protection of habitat for the birds?
Thank you for the question. I think for us, the international world of Indigenous peoples are faced with similar issues, like impacts due to resource development, environmental impacts and stuff like that, impacts on wildlife as well. The migratory birds for the Canada goose, like it migrates down south every spring, comes up north, and it's a main diet for the Cree. And as for the red knot, I had to look into it, and once I saw the picture of it, that's when I realized when I was a kid, I used to see a lot of those along the shorelines, and of course that's how kids were introduced into hunting, and they were encouraged to hunt birds with a slingshot, not with a gun, with a slingshot. And of course, those were one of the birds I had an interest in. And I think Indigenous peoples need to be involved in the restoration and rehabilitation of sites that were contaminated due to mining or other types of resource development projects. And for in our case, up in Chibougamau area here in Ojibwamo, in the southern part of the Cree territory, I mentioned before in the early 30s, mining activities intensified in the area, and that's how Chibougamau was built, because of mine principal. It was a big mine owned by Camel Resources. At the time, back in the 50s, 60s, the Mining Act was very lenient, and they after the closure of the mine in the 90s, they left 3 big tailings that were huge of all mines, mine waste, and there was a lot of acid. There was no vegetation on those tailings. So it took us 20 years to actually, for the Cree, our community anyway, to be actively and meaningfully involved in the development of a restoration and rehabilitation plan for that site. And that's where those birds are. And our hope, our vision for that is to ensure that the state of the environment is clean again, and the wildlife and migratory birds can come back into those areas to have a nice area. But our vision for that was to make sure that all the hunters and trappers that use that area would be able to go back into those areas to carry out their traditional activities.
It's really helpful because you're describing both the incredible ambition and vision to protect your homelands where they are in good shape, but also this intense and decades of work that's required for restoration of damaged areas, and this balance between protection and restoration. And you've spoken about the impact of mining and also forestry. One of the other species that many people follow closely that is very much in need of restoration as much as protection is, of course, the woodland caribou. And we know that industrial logging has reduced habitat of caribou across Canada, not just in Eeyou, Istchee. Can you speak a little bit about the importance of how we halt and reverse the decline of caribou in your territory, and what is really needed for action on that?
Yeah, before the back then there was a lot of forestry activities that took place in the northern part of the Ojibwa's traditional territory, and at the time there was no the Cree were not consulted in these areas, so naturally the industry, forest industry, is seldom driven by money, and that was the number one thing for them. And then they would go in and harvest in these areas, and especially in the moose caribou habitat areas, the woodland caribou anyway. So when we built the community, we were looking at transforming the wildlife reserve into a national park, and we were able to do that. We were able to have the boundaries of the national park, the core of the park, and however, we're still working on the park, but there's no industrial development in there. So also, what helped for us was the protected areas. For Ojibwa, that we added an area in the just outside the core of the park where caribou were, and we added the protected area around that area. So we have a big area that we're protecting for woodland caribou, so that our hunters and trappers can continue to harvest their traditional foods.
Thank you so much. You described so well all of the active leadership and work that is happening by the Cree and your engagement with actors in your territory. I wonder, because we have a broad listener base with us today, could you maybe just speak to how people in other parts of Quebec and across Canada can support your work along the coast and across your territory? What would you like to say to them, and offer suggestions of how we can be helpful and support this journey?
Thank you. There's one of the things that's a movement that's happening here with amongst the Cree and our neighboring Indigenous groups that we neighbor with. We've been signing a nation-to-nation agreements with other Indigenous groups without a federal or without the province. And our goal there is to ensure the protection of different species of animals, like caribou, for example. We just recently signed one, and we also signed with the Eeyou to look at an overlapped area where we could work together, because we looked at our common visions, our common goals, and then these agreements allow us to be able to work together to address our common concerns. And so far, Quebec was pretty silent on that, and they called us and they expressed that it is important for the caribou, for the Indigenous peoples to work together to ensure that the health of the caribou is it's healthy. The population is healthy. And other with Quebec, we've been working with them a lot, and as well as Canada, we're able to work with them. Of course, there's a movement to protect the environment, and because of climate change and industrial development, impacts of industrial development, and I find that it's in our lines to be able to work with other levels of governments. The Cree have adopted a negotiating way of life since Pays de Brave, since the JBNQA. That's how we address a lot of our issues. And we believe in partnership. We believe in working together towards a common goal. So any company or any government that's willing to work with the Cree, we're open for that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it to Ted now because I know that our listeners have been posting a lot of their own questions. And maybe, Ted, do you want to read out a couple of questions from our listeners to Deputy Grand Chief?
Absolutely. Thank you, Gauri. Thank you, Deputy Grand Chief. The excellent presentation. Looking through the questions, there's definitely some themes there. And Deputy Grand Chief, I wonder, for starters, if you could maybe address or explain the significance of these categories of lands, and in terms of what that means in terms of who can use them and what sort of things can take place on them, category 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. For category one lands, it's usually the Cree that uses that exclusively. We can do it like right now here in Ojibwa. We find that Pays de Brave, the adapted forestry regime, can still be improved. So Ojibwa on our side, we're developing a forest management plan that'll address a lot of the concerns that the hunters and trappers have expressed out on category 3 lands. So we use it to our advantage to be able to meet the community's needs. Category 2 lands are now with it's an area where the Cree can hunt, fish, and trap up in those areas, and it's exclusive use for them. For category 3 lands, these Quebec sees them as public lands, and this is where a lot of activities like forestry, like mining, take place. And the Cree, these areas, this is where all our family trap lines are. So every tallyman, families have areas where they can hunt, carry out traditional pursuits up in those areas to carry out cultural activities. And of course, in these areas, we still play a role in safeguarding a lot of the sites that are of special interest to the Cree. Any proposed mining activities or major development that's being proposed within these areas, the Cree automatically be involved in consultations and to look at these potential environmental and social impact these projects will have. And we still have powers up there. For example, at one time we had the uranium project up in the Istchee area, and the Cree were able to and that project would have had a detrimental impact on the environment and the Cree way of life. And the Cree were able to put a halt on that project. So there's, as you come out of category 1 land going on to category 2 lands, category 1 lands, you have exclusive powers. The Cree have exclusive powers in there. And then category 2 lands and category 3 lands.
Great, thank you. There's some other questions, cluster of them around the Cree place names and efforts to restore those names, how supportive the Quebec government has been of that, and where that's going, and also some of the meanings behind the names and how whether they can be translated or not into English or French.
Yeah, the Cree Place Names project was something that was the Cree Nation government worked on, and I remember I was at my camp when they came in and interviewed my father, and my father and mother were there to. It was the first time I heard of these Cree place names out on the family trap line, our family trap line, because a lot of the place were these place names, Cree place names were eroded, and as the French came in, a lot of our lakes, our mountains, these sites that were uh, of great importance, they had French names, a lot of them. So we wanted to place pre-place names back in there just to make sure that the youth will be able to identify and associate themselves with the land. So we have a lot of programs in place where we have the youth land-based projects, programs that are in place where the youth go onto the land. So we've been working, and I think right now they're trying to get them registered in Quebec, and but we're right now I think we're looking at some priorities of places which ones that we were going to name. But it was an amazing thing when my father walked into my office. All of a sudden, it was the land itself became alive, and it had a story to tell, and that really touched me. And I spoke to the guy that was working on it, and I wanted to during my term as deputy grand chief. I told him what more can we do on that? And it's something. It's like EUC. Like I said, EUC is a living land. You remove EUC and put Bay James area, you're robbing a child, a youth, from his identity, and because he identifies with the land. So it's a for me it's a nice project to work on.
I thank you. It's a great example, very moving example, and it really does say to me that we need to make an effort. Settlers need to make an effort to learn the language, learn the names at the very least, out of respect. I think that's very important. Deputy Grand Chief, there was another question similar to what Gauri asked earlier, but it was more about scientists and NGOs who are interested in supporting the work that Cree Nation government is doing towards protecting, towards this goal of 50%, and what the pathway is towards that. I don't know if you can spend a moment describing how you envision those partnerships.
Well, for us, when we worked on the 20% areas to protect our air, like use 20%, we had worked closely with the elders, land users, to be able to do that. And one of the things that excites me is when identifying an area that is significantly important for to each community, and documenting what took place in those areas. And there's a lot of history, like valuable history, a lot of hidden treasures there that we need to look at. And that for me was able to. I was glad to see that transpire where you had 20%, and there's still a little more work that needs to be done. And as for the 30% areas, protected areas, I'd like to see the Cree a little more proactive and how they see the 30% instead of having Quebec come up with a work that needs to be done on how they see 30%. And I'm sure they're looking at opening up the area for development or some of some type. But for us, it's something that I would like to see in our negotiations with Quebec for the Cree to have to play a meaningful role in how we're going to create these 30% protected areas to come up with the 50%. So there's still a lot of work to do, and I look forward to this type of works. And Chantal Tetro and her team has been doing a remarkable job in moving and advancing this file with here in the USC.
Thank you. We're certainly very grateful to be part of that and supporting you as well. I think this is probably there's many more questions, and maybe a really quick one before we ask you for the final remarks. There was an area you talked about that was restored over 20-year period of mining site. Could you just remind us what the name of that site is? I think some of the listeners are interested in knowing that.
The area I was talking about is it's in the northern shores of Dory Lake, where that area. We had roughly around in the 50s, 60s. Our elders said that there was about 27 exploration sites that took place around that area, and it was gold. And the mine principal, which is the name of that site, was used by other. That's where the tailings were. A lot of them. That was the main mine that was there. It was called Camel Mine, and they employed roughly over 1,100 or 200 workers in that area for a 30-year period. That was the lifespan of the mine. 30 years of operation, and you look at the tailings, and they're huge. They're really, really huge. If you go on Google Earth and you see those tailings, you'll see the whole area of Door Lake. It's near the town of Chibougamau. It's more towards the east of Chibougamau. And you'll see Chibougamau Lake and Door Lake right beside each other. And it's that place where there's a lot of acid-minded drainage. And the level of toxicity in the environment, the sediments, and the marine life was, when we did the studies, were very high. It was a big concern for the land, for the Cree that use that area for traditional activities like fishing. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Thank you. And we could spend hours sharing stories and answering questions, because we just kind of scratched the surface, I think, but we're just almost out of time now, Deputy Grand Chief. So on behalf of Nature Canada and our online community here, I'd like to thank you for sharing your knowledge about the Cree Nation in Quebec, what you're doing to protect it and restore the culture, restore the biodiversity, these great examples through the names, the mining example. And with that, I'd like to invite you, Deputy Grand Chief Wapachi, to share some closing reflections, thoughts you might have on the Cree vision to give the land a voice. I know that those words mean a lot to you. They're very important. And then we'll say goodbye for this afternoon.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of this event, and it was an honor and a great privilege to be able to speak to the participants. As final remarks, I'd like to share back then, it was always the Cree custom for when an old hunter, a tallyman that looked after a family trapline, when he was unable to do the activities he used to do, he would always hand down the family trapline to his son. And he would tell his son, it's your turn to look after the land. Take care of it. Share the resources. Those were the responsibilities that were given to a younger hunter that was handed over the family trapline. I think this new leadership that got elected, Mandy, the Grand Chief, and myself, that's the feeling I had when we got elected in. we both came out from the environment side. I myself was working as a director of natural resources for my community. And my role was to ensure that resource development was compatible with the Cree way of life. And it reflected the Cree philosophy of conservation. Mandy, on the other hand, had extensive work experience in looking at other biodiversity areas and protected areas files. So when we came on board, it felt like that the Cree Nation handed over the Eeyou for us to safeguard, to ensure that mechanisms were put in place to ensure the protection of the environment and the Cree way of life, and to restore that and strengthen that mother-child relationship we have with the land. And I think it's for me, it says I'll have a very. I look forward to my mandate. I felt like we got all the briefings that we received from all the agreements and working with the different Cree bodies, entities, and I think our work is about to begin to really make changes in the way we do things. It's for the betterment of the Cree people, the Innu, and the land. And for me, it's always giving a land a voice was something that meant a lot to me. Because, like I said, we are Innu. We're inextricably tied to the land. We have an obligation and a responsibility to protect the land and all life that's within it. And if I can give the land a voice while I'm here, it'll be it means a lot to me to be able to do that for our future generations. Thank you for having me.
Miigwech, merci. Thank you so much, Deputy Grand Chief, for your words, your wisdom, and for all that you and your communities are doing to give the land a voice. A final thank you also to participants and to the interpreters who have helped connect us all across languages to learn about Istchee. We encourage all of you to follow this important work. There is, through our website, you can continue to learn more, as well as the website, of course, directly of the Cree Nation government. The URL for ours is on the screen now. I can't believe I did that. All this time I've been chatting on mute. Miigwech, merci. Thank you so much, Deputy Grand Chief, for your words and all you do to help give the land a voice. Just a final thanks. See, I mean, you just gave me a voice with your expression on your face. You're helping all of us to find our voice. I thank you, all you, also the participants and to the interpreters who have really helped connect us across languages to learn about Istchee. We encourage you all to follow this important work. There's a general link and URL on the website and a link, a more direct link in the chat. You can also, of course, go directly to the website of the Cree Nation government. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye all.